Good morning, Eastside, and anybody else joining in with us this morning. I hope that you had a good week. Today we're going to be in Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 1 through 2. That's all we're going to be in, just a small little portion of text. And the title of this message is Running After Jesus. So if you've read this passage, the passage before this one, chapter 11, it talks about a lot of the heroes of the faith. And when we get to chapter 12, I'm going to read it for us. It'll say, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders. So this is after we know that there's a grandstand of people of the faith, like Moses and Abraham, Joseph. Okay, so I don't know if y'all know, but I have a great family history of runners in my family. On my dad's side, my grandfather on my dad's side was a long distance runner. And I believe he's the one who started the family tradition of long distance running. He ran many races, and he was so good at it, I believe he actually has a race that's named after him in Anderson, Indiana. And my cousin Brock, after him, he kind of carried the torch of long distance running. He ran at Notre Dame University, as well as a university over in New Mexico, and he did really well. And then there's me. I think I've probably told y'all I am not a fan of. I just now started kind of liking running as a part of my fitness regimen, but I've run a few 5Ks in the past. There was a Christmas 5K that I ran, and there was a pie run that I ran, which sounded intriguing because you get to have pie at the end of the race. And all you had to do was finish. You didn't have to win, but you just had to finish, and they gave you a piece of pie, so that sounded good. Needless to say, I did not get first place in that race. It was me, my brother, and my dad. None of us got first place, but if I look back at the past, at my family history, I have a great example of runners to look at. And like we'll see today in our text, as Christians, we have a good history of believers to look back at that are cheering us on. Like I said, Hebrews 12, verse 1 says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. This verse says that we have a great cloud of witnesses. If you look, like I said, at chapter 11, at the heroes of faith, in the list you'll see big names like Moses, and it summarizes what he did in leading the Israelites. Abraham is listed, and he tells of his faithfulness to God in offering Isaac as a sacrifice. Noah and his faithfulness in building the ark to save his family. And the list goes on. Witness. That word witness in that verse can mean spectator and surrounded. The word surrounded brings to mind an amphitheater. So you would think of ancient architecture of the amphitheater, where there was performances and athletic events. The heroes of our faith are in the stands. And what a wonderful picture that is. The ancients of the Bible are not ignoring us in heaven, just partying their eternal life. Okay, I hope I'm back on. But they are rooting for us. F.F. Bruce says it's not so much that they who look at us as we look at them for encouragement. When I was in high school, one of the sports that I competed in was javelin. If you don't know what the event javelin is, it's basically a long spear that you're trying to throw as far as you can, further than anybody else. And whoever throws it the furthest wins. It's pretty simple. Simple but hard. Well, there was one day that I had a track meet, and I was going up against some pretty good competition. And in javelin, you get 3 throws, and the judges will take your furthest throw out of the 3. And what you're throwing in to get a qualified distance is kind of like a cone shape, and it goes out, and you have to get it between those lines to qualify it. I don't know if you can picture that. Well, where I was sitting, I was currently in 3rd place at this time. I had thrown my first 2 throws, and it was up for my last throw. And all of a sudden, I see my family all show up at the same time. They found my event, and they went up and sat in the stands. Well, immediately, I felt encouraged because that's my family. They care about me, and they're going to support me. They were cheering, go Luke, whatever. And so, in dramatic style, I get up to the runway to go throw my javelin, and I run down the line, and I get down to the end, and I yell out a quote from the movie The 300. I yelled, "This is Sparta." And I chunked that thing as far as I could. And I got 2nd place in the event. 2nd to this big old steroided out Samoan guy. We won't talk about that. I'm not bitter about that. But my family was such an encouragement to me. And in that moment, I really felt encouraged because my family was there cheering me on. And we can be encouraged in our walk with Christ by the great cloud of witnesses cheering us on in heaven. You may not think as a Christian that you have a heritage of faith in your family because on earth you're the first believer in your family. But when you're a Christian, when you become a Christian, you become a part of a much bigger family. And I think that's a great thing to look at, is that you actually have people that came before you, other believers of the family that are cheering you on. So I hope that's an encouragement to you. I love that Moses and King David are cheering for me, to think about that. But I also think about my loved ones as well who have finished the race, and they are cheering me on and you on, all of us on through life now as well. I can imagine them saying things like, you got this, just push a little further. God is holding you up. Finish school, keep seeking God in everything you do. Things like that. I think that is a great way to think about it. Let us throw off is the next phrase in this passage we're looking at, and it most likely refers to the ancient Greek. This whole thing is just covered in athletic terminology. So let us throw off most likely refers to the ancient Greek athletes, and when they ran, they would take off their clothes and they would lose excess fat to run as fast as possible to perform at the highest level they could. And like we as Christians are, and it's just the same way, like we are to get rid of sin. They shed clothes and fat, we get rid of our sin. It ties us down, and it slows down our process towards being a more complete Christian. Colossians 3, verse 5 through 8 says, "Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to our earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived, but now you must also rid yourselves of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. This encouragement we receive should move us to act, to throw off these things that are holding us back, these sins that easily entangle us. And they're holding us back from a better relationship with God, and they're trying to block our path to eternity. Remember, we're thinking of this as a race, and this is a roadblock. It is getting in our way, and we need to get around it. The next part of Hebrews 12, 1 through 2 says, "And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith." The word perseverance here, or endurance, shows that the author has a marathon in mind while writing this. And this is not a sprint. This is not a short race. This race called life is a long one. And if we want to make it, we're going to have to lean on God and His Word. This is not a sprint. We can't just run and be out of breath for a minute and be done. This is a long race. And the only way you can prepare is through reading God's Word and having a prayerful relationship with Him, having a meaningful relationship with Him, knowing that He is your sustainer. There will be some rocks you might trip on in this race called life, and maybe some vomiting involved. We're still doing the athletic terminology, you might even pass out. But if you're letting God lead you, He will give you some water and a granola bar, and He will pat you on the back, and you'll be back on your feet. The race is marked out. Picturing a runner looking down the track, knowing where they need to go. Now, they have to employ their training to complete this task. This reminds me of an episode watching Bear Grylls. He's one of the extreme survivalists on TV, where normal people are dumped in the middle of nowhere with him. There was this one episode where the pro football running back Marshawn Lynch was on the show with him, and him and Bear Grylls were looking for some food, and they came across this huge lizard out in the jungle, and Bear Grylls immediately knew what was for dinner. He was like, that lizard's going to be for dinner. But Marshawn Lynch didn't want anything to do with it. He was scared of it. But he was the only reason Marshawn Lynch knew that that's what they needed to do and where they needed to go to get food. He showed Marshawn Lynch what was necessary for survival. He marked the path for them like God marks our faith path. We have knowledge and training through the Word to complete our task. God has laid out everything we need to know about running this race in this book, the Bible. This book is our training manual. If we want to perform well in the race, we're going to have to train hard on our workout regimen, basically. And the thing about world champion runners, about elite athletes, elite runners, is they are constantly training. They're constantly learning. Same goes for our faith in regards to our mind and life. We have to train ourselves in the Word constantly, reorienting our mind, which in turn will affect the way that we live and act. The word pioneer means that Christ is the champion, which fits the athletic imagery, and perfecter, that word might connote that He is the initiator. Jesus cleared the path of faith for us so that we may run the race ourselves. Not of hurdles, but He took out the roadblock. Like I said, there will be stumbling and obstacles we have to get around, but Christ defeated sin, which was the ultimate roadblock when he died on the cross, and he made the race possible. And it is possible by running towards him, Jesus Christ. Hebrews 12, starting midway through verse 2, says, "For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." I can remember playing football in Louisiana growing up, and there is nothing like it. I think that summer practices for football, those two-a-days, might be the closest thing to hell that I've experienced, frankly. I remember the 100-plus degree heat with the humidity so thick it felt like you were breathing a 10-pound weight down your throat. And we would run hills, we would do suicide sprints, lift weights, general strength, sand pit, you name it, the list goes on. A lot of times when summer practice would first kick up, when I was younger, about halfway through practice, I would usually have to throw up because we were out of shape, and I would go off to the side and do what I had to do. And then my dad would tell me, this is when I was younger, to get my composure and get back out there. He would encourage me. That it was, not your little, light pat on the back. It was what I needed because I was a hard-headed boy. It was, hey, you need to get back out there. You need to man up. But I endured a lot of physical pain from football. I would think that's actually probably the closest thing to suffering that I can think of. And when you think about that, that is nothing compared to what many other people on this earth have gone through. And it certainly does not compare to what Christ bore for us. Not even close. Jesus knew what was ahead of him, and he did it willingly. He is the perfect example of what endurance looks like, looking past the immediate pain and the reward that was ahead. The cross was reserved for the lowest of the low, and was gruesome and shameful. But Jesus just scorned the scorn of the cross and went through with it. And he finished the race and is now seated at the right hand of God in heaven. My prayer is that one day we can all say what Paul says in 2 Timothy 4, 7 through 8, that I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith, and now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. There's a movie that came out a while ago called Unbroken. And it was the story of Louis Zamperini. He was a long-distance runner in the 1936 Summer Olympics. And after that, he went and he fought in World War II in Japan. And he was taken as a prisoner of war while he was over there. And he endured many hardships. The movie goes through what he endured in the prison of war camp. And it was terrible. He endured many hardships. He was beaten and he was starved. But Louis' real race, I do not believe, started until he became a Christian after the war. And he even forgave his captors. That is the true victory of his story that the movie probably does not really emphasize as much as it should. We are going to face many hardships, and we're going to have to jump many hurdles to get where we're going. This is a long race. But God is with us, and he will uphold us with his righteous right hand. He has given his Son as a guide to us. The race is already marked out. All we have to do is follow him and finish the race. I love y'all, and I hope y'all have a great Sunday.